Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Did the NBA's draft lottery change the way the Lakers are going to approach the offseason? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one is always free and never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 24,000 subscribers to the channel, all of whom are paying close attention to the Lakers coaching search. Of course, we are as well, Andy, but not a lot of news on that front today. Really, the only a little bit of chatter around Chris Quinn being kind of added to the Lakers coaching search. His name has been bandied about a little bit, but of course, Chris Quinn, assistant Miami, just means that if the Lakers did hire him, he would get injured. That's basically how any hire from Miami works for the Lakers. So we'll keep everybody updated on that. I want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So like I said, Andy, not a whole lot happening on the coaching front today, but the NBA's draft lottery, we did not get a chance to get to this. Super interesting, both on a value of tanking standpoint. Poor Detroit. These guys just can't catch a break. Second year in a row that this has happened to them, where they're the worst team in the league. Cautionary tale for those of you out there who want to rely on the draft lottery for improving your team. But on the other hand, you can just, play your way into the play-in like the Atlanta Hawks did, Andy, and suddenly find yourself with the number one pick. And that has the potential to really change the offseason for the Lakers.
Yeah, it's very interesting because Atlanta, by all, I'm not even going to say reports, because Landry Fields, their GM, said on the record, we were shocked by this. They had 3% odds mathematically of getting the number one pick. So this is nothing that they had been planning for up to the moment of the draft lottery. And all of a sudden, it gives them options on the table that they may not have been thinking about before. Like the idea of, okay, we have a number one overall draft. A draft pick. Could this potentially be the impetus towards truly starting over? Because the Hawks, ever since that Eastern Conference Finals run, I believe in 2021, they have been steadily moving backwards and seemingly with no answers. Both Trae Young and Dejounte Murray have been very well reported on the block. Alternately, they may both still be there. But then also, I was listening to Locked On Hawks because I was trying to get some perspective about what this could do for the team, because bringing the Lakers into it, the Lakers have been very publicly linked to both Dejounte Murray and Trae Young, who, side note, just left Clutch, which breaks a potential connection to the Lakers, because I'm not saying that Trae Young no longer being a Clutch client, he's now with CAA, means he won't be a Laker, but just what we've seen over the last 5 years confirms your odds of ending up a Laker never increase not being a Clutch client.
Well, at the very least, it removes that very clear and obvious through line that, well, he's a Clutch guy and therefore. So it theoretically cuts down on the chatter a little bit, theoretically.
Well, I mean, it also cuts down on the actuality. I mean, there's no doubt that being a Clutch client can up your odds of ending up a Laker. Just look at the last 4 or 5 years of the Clutch and how many Clutch clients they've had. But anyway, when I was listening to Locked On Hawks, because I was looking to get some Atlanta perspective on what might happen, he had on, Brad Rowland had on a draft guy, Brian Schroeder, and he mentioned something that I had not thought of it this way before, but Alexander Sarr is basically considered the consensus number one overall pick. He's a French big man who's been playing in Australia, and basically all of the mock drafts have him going number one. He is not considered like a slam dunk. He's not considered the next Wemby out of France, but a pretty good player.
Yeah, the impression I'm getting in the draft, and most people say, is that the knock on this draft isn't so much that there aren't good players available as you go deeper, which is obviously something that's relevant to the Lakers, but that the top of the draft has very few, what people would think of as like surefire all-stars, right, or all NBA types. It's not that kind of draft.
But he brought up how if you are a team that feels like you already have a number one player in place, and that was applicable for this year because the draft order ended up so unusual and weird. Like San Antonio has the 4th and 8th pick. They clearly already have a number one guy in place, that you might feel like, hey, it's worth taking one of these guys even towards the top, because if we have a number one, we could be bringing in a very, very good number two and continue building that way.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting, just with the idea of if the Hawks believe at all in the idea of Trae Young still as a number one cornerstone player, but just felt like they haven't had the right complementary pieces, maybe it could make them a little more likely to keep Trae if they feel like somebody like Sarr might complement him that well. It's just, or would, say, the Spurs be looking to trade up to that number one and complement Wemby with Sarr? Just different combinations like that. But I just thought it was really interesting. It was a different way of thinking about it, because usually those number one through like number 5 picks, you're always thinking about franchise cornerstone. And I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, and it's the thing that obviously, like you say, like the fact that it can kind of go either way is one of those deals where, like, if you're Atlanta, are you looking at this as an opportunity to, let's just blow it up. Let's get rid of Dejounte. Let's get rid of Trae Young and start over, build around, Okongwu and some of your other young players. Cause like you say, it's sort of not going anywhere. On the other hand, you could also look at it and say, okay, we don't need this number one pick. It's not the best number one pick in the world. And maybe there's somebody, okay, we wouldn't get the huge haul we would have gotten last year for trying to trade out of the Wemby pick, but you can still get something pretty good for a team that wants to move up a little bit or something like that. And maybe we can find the right pieces to put around this Atlanta team that sort of has talent. Jalen Johnson's a good player. Like, they've got, it just doesn't, the parts don't work together. And then you question whether or not Trae Young and Dejounte Murray are the right way to go here. It's like every option seems to me, when I look at this, as on the table, from the impetus to blow it up to maybe we try to stick it out a little bit longer. Obviously, if they decide to blow it up, the Lakers, who are rumored to be, attached to everyone, including, from Trae Young through Dejounte Murray, if he goes back on the market, to Donovan Mitchell, to all these things, the Atlanta Hawks deciding to blow things up becomes an extremely relevant thing for LA. Because think about it, Andy, from their perspective, Dejounte Murray, Trae Young, you offer one of those things to the Lakers. The Lakers very much rumored to be willing to trade the number 17 pick. Now you have 17, a couple other draft picks maybe. Like, that's not the worst way to do it, especially to own a bunch of Lakers picks that I know a lot of teams around the league think could be real valuable over the next few years. Like, owning the Lakers pick 6 years from now could earn some dividends. So let's talk about how you handle this if you're the Lakers. Who do you try to get from Atlanta, and for what? We'll do that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL. The playoffs are going on, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just put down $5, you win it, boom, there's your bonus bets, $150 worth, and you can use them on spreads, money lines, player props, all sorts of fun options. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So obviously, Andy, the fact that Trae Young is now a CAA guy maybe cuts into some of the obviousness of Trae Young to the Lakers, but until the reporting completely cuts that avenue off and says the Lakers just aren't interested, he's going to be linked to the Lakers.
There's been a little bit of increasing chatter that the Lakers have grown more disinterested in Trae Young. I mean, it's so early now. Take all of this with seriously. We even take the things we are analyzing, whatever, with a grain of salt. Nobody knows anything now. Everybody's lying their asses off.
It's a salt lick. Yeah, at this point, it's so salty. But that could also be the Lakers just saying, trying to cool the market,
of course,
for them, because they are still, he is. If you are interested in a star, there aren't going to be that many on the market. He is one of them. He is considered a starrier star, certainly the Dejounte Murray. Theoretically, both could be on the market. Both will cost you something fairly significant, I would think. Setting aside the mechanics of how you get both of those guys, how do you approach this if you're the Lakers?
I'd much rather have Dejounte Murray. I mean, I'll just be flat out honest. I don't like the idea of adding Trae Young, in part because, without getting too deep into the weeds with the mechanics of it all, Trae Young makes about $17 million more than Dejounte Murray, meaning you have to add $17 million more of salary in order to make this work. So you will have to, by definition, rob yourself of infrastructure in order to make this work. And I feel like Trae Young is a player that you need a lot of infrastructure around, especially defensively, in order to make up for his shortcomings as a player. Like, I don't think he is a bad player. And I will say this, as a playmaker, I actually think he's grown pretty underrated.
Yeah.
But I think he is thought of as a better shooter than he is. I think he's extremely ball dominant. He's not particularly great off ball. And if you don't like D'Angelo Russell's defense, or you don't like Austin Reeves' defense through a lot of this season, kids, let me tell you something. You ain't got no idea what you're about to step into if Trae Young ends up on this team. Like, D'Angelo Russell is prime Gary Payton compared to Trae Young. I think Dejounte Murray's a better two-way player. He costs less. He's under contract for a year longer. He is 2 years older than Trae Young. Mm-hmm. But I think he is a better fit. And it's interesting. If you look up some of the numbers on them, at least over the past couple of years, like as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, they're basically the same guy.
Trae Young is volume. I mean, he's certainly capable. He's more explosive scorer.
He gets the line more than Dejounte Murray.
Right.
He gets the line a lot.
He's a really good offensive player, inefficiencies notwithstanding. And I agree with you. I think there is it is possible to take the Trae Young sucks, like worst star in the league talk a little too far.
No, agreed.
And I think a lot of times the analysis gets to that place. That said, I think the part that you talked about that really resonates with me is the idea that it's not that he's bad, it's that you have to tilt too much of what you do to protect him, to work around his shortcomings. And, you can't even say, well, you stick him with Anthony Davis and, Trae Young becomes a different kind of defender. No, I mean, he's been with Clint Capella, he's been with Okongwu. I mean, like, they've had some rim protection in Atlanta in his time there. He's just not good. He's too little. And so, even when he's putting out the effort, the size is just a problem. And he's not good enough that you have to, that you want to reshape your entire supporting cast. Your I mean, he's better at basketball than Tim Tebow was at football. But one of the big problems with Tebow, if you go back to that, isn't just that he wasn't very good. It's that to make him work, to take advantage of his strengths, you had to reform your entire roster, and it just wasn't worth the trouble. And that's really what I feel about Trae Young. It's not that he's a bad player. It's that his shortcomings are too large to make it worth working around, particularly when you don't have the flexibility that the Lakers just don't have. Like, they really don't have the ability to craft a roster in the same way that they would if they picked up Murray, or if you get Donovan Mitchell or something like that. And for the price it would probably take to get Trae Young, you can probably get yourself as close as you're going to be able to get to an offer for Donovan Mitchell, who I'd much rather have than Trae Young.
Yeah, if you're going to offer the house for one of these guys, I mean, Donovan Mitchell, of the three players we named, Donovan Mitchell's the best player. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to be making that type of Godfather offer, he's the one that is most worth doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
An appeal of Dejounte Murray is I don't think he, like, I'm not going to say if we're putting in Godfather parlance that it requires a Fredo offer, but it might be more of like a Sonny Corleone offer than, say, a Michael Corleone offer, or even like a Vito Corleone,
or like one of the cousins or something.
No, he's like a Sonny Corleone. Like, he's higher up in the chain, or you know what? He might even be Tom Hagen. He could be a Tom Hagen level offer. Solid guy, very important to the organization. But again, he's not Michael.
And I think this is one of the things that contextually,
this is the way, by the way, Godfather offers should be framed and talked about more often.
I'm going to make you an offer that you can refuse, but it's still pretty good. Like,
just framing it in terms of Godfather characters.
Exactly.
I don't like this.
When you start to move down, like Donovan Mitchell is going to cost you everything. He's the best player. He's going to cost you everything. Might be worth it. I don't love the 3-star approach. The Lakers have been working with that, but for a player, that the big thing about this, when people say the 3-star model is broken and this and that, like, look at what happened in Phoenix. The problem with Phoenix isn't necessarily that they went 3 stars. It's that the 3rd star, it's A, they don't fit together great, and B, the 3rd star isn't good enough. And so Bradley Beal isn't good enough. Donovan Mitchell is a much better player at this point than Beal is, I think.
Well, I agree, but also, too, there is far less redundancy, even if you don't love the idea of giving up the house for Donovan Mitchell, and I could understand that.
Sure.
But that notwithstanding, there's less redundancy with Mitchell, LeBron, and AD than there is Durant, correct, Booker, and Beal. And 100%. That's another very big deal. I also think to some degree the 3-star model being outdated in a lot of ways is more about the price of the stars as well as the fit, because you can make an argument that, like, SGA and Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, they're becoming pretty close to a 3-star model. Or
sure, but they're just all really cheap, right?
Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. or what's going on in Boston. Like, you can make an argument that those teams have 3-star models. It's just the fits and the prices work. Mm-hmm. What you can't do if you're attempting to go 3 stars is mess it up in the slightest.
Right.
It really has to, especially if they are past rookie scale deals and, like, they're on super maxes, like grandfathered in because they've been around the league a while. Like, honestly, one of the big cautionary tales of the 3-star model, if we're talking about this now, might be you can't have too many of them old at the same time.
Oh God, no. Well, young is better. 3 stars is fine. Let's try to make at least one of them under 30.
Apropos to the Lakers.
Yes. I knew who you
saying. That's one of the issues.
I knew who you were talking about there.
I just wanted to make sure it was crystal clear. Yeah. But that's one of the issues.
And so the next one down is Trae Young, in terms of just the 3 guys we're talking about. Other guys shake loose. We'll see what happens and blah, blah, blah. But the Lakers, with the 3 picks to offer and the contract of Rui and whatever it is, at least can try to make a compelling offer for this stuff. Trae Young's
opted in D'Lo.
Yeah. Trae Young's probably going to cost you most, or at least Atlanta's going to try to extract most of what Cleveland would extract from Mitchell from whoever goes after Trae Young. I don't necessarily think they'll get it because of Young's sort of limitations and what are seen as shortcomings. But you drop down to Murray, and depending on what the market looks like, the important thing to remember is it's Murray because it's Murray plus whatever you get to keep for not trading for Mitchell and those other guys. And that could mean Austin Reeves. It could mean Max Christie. It could mean a lot of different, and I know there's free agency and restraint. Leave all that out for a minute. But I think people understand what I'm getting at. Like the stuff that you don't have to give up in a deal kind of counts towards your trade price. Like that's your team after that. Would you rather have Murray plus the two other guys, or Donovan Mitchell and really go with that Phoenix model and hope it works better? So we'll kick this around a little bit more. Also, some interesting news about Bronny James and the NBA draft, and obviously all of that seems to influence what goes on in LA. So we'll get to it next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. The easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2-player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the basketball postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball and hockey entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this basketball playoff season. Again, really easy to play. You can make your picks in 60 seconds or less with submitting your entry. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
The Lakers last year, Andy, at this time, really they leaned into continuity. Obviously, they won't be able to do that quite as much this year because the coach is going to be different. But they have a similar choice available to them this year. Like with D'Angelo Russell, whose situation is obviously pretty interesting in the sense that we don't know what the market's going to look like, but he is going to be almost impossible for the Lakers to replace, at least without some sort of sign and trade or whatever. And it may end up in everybody's interest. He still may be more valuable here, money wise, role wise, whatever, than he is somewhere else. They do not have to trade Rui Hachimura. There's no rule that says they have to. They can hold on to Max Christie and actually play him next year. They have a pick that they can, draft someone who might play. What do you think? Like, what's your gut telling you right now about how they want to go forward? I think they're going to push pretty hard on the star thing, but I'm not as 100% sold on that as I have been at other times with the Lakers.
I don't think there are a ton of stars rumored to be out there that are such slam dunk fits that you necessarily have to move heaven and earth for them. Doesn't mean that the Lakers won't feel pressured to do it. I think they will try to find something that works in a deal with D'Lo, just because I sense, and I wouldn't blame them for thinking that the D'Lo Reeves backcourt has too many limitations, particularly defensively, to work long term. And
let's say you trade for somebody like Murray, now you have to figure out like D'Lo off the bench, like it does become
D'Lo could theoretically be either part of that deal or rerouted somewhere else, or
I'm just saying it becomes complicated.
Or they relent and move Austin Reeves, and then you team up DeJounte Murray and D'Lo. And I will say
Sure.
this, not that I'm pushing for an Austin Reeves deal, but as a general rule of thumb, if they are really serious about being all in, they have to be willing to move Austin Reeves. Like, Reeves is a good player, and I know he's on a hell of a bargain contract, but he is not so good that he should be off the table. He should be lower on the list of guys that you're willing to move. I understand that. But I think if they are treating Reeves as untouchable, and I'm not saying they are, but I think there's a perception that he's pretty close. Right. Reeves should not be treated as untouchable. Again, if they are true, like if you're going to bother, say, going all in to bring in someone like Trae Young, who is a questionable fit as part of your all-in move, then you can't do that, but also keep Austin Reeves off the table. Like, that to me is, again, bad process. I think they will look to make a deal for involving D'Lo, and I would be very surprised if they don't find some way to use the 17th pick on an established player, if for no other reason than to keep LeBron from murdering them. Because I think if you do this 2 years in a row, he is going to be livid.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm not the only one who's curious about this, but like how the trade market shakes out going into this draft. Again, we talked about Atlanta. Like, this isn't a normal year to trade the number one pick. It's not without value, but it's not like there are 2 or 3 guys at the top of the draft that you feel like, as long as we get one of those dudes, we're going to be okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the 17th pick, it might be a good year to try to trade the 17, because there's more depth there, and teams have that in mind. Like, they have to come back with somebody who's ready to play in the league. They need more players who are ready to play in the league. And then you get, like, what do you do with Rui? Like, what is his value? Because he really did, the last impression that he gave was not a good one, because his Denver series was terrible. That said, his post Darvin put him back in the starting lineup run was actually quite good. And you saw exactly what Hachimura could give you. There are some flaws there. The rebounding's not, it's not as consistent as you want it to be and whatever. So you kind of see the full case with Rui. You never want to have to trade distressed assets. I don't think like Reeves, for example, at this point would be considered distressed, whereas it looked at the beginning of the season like he might be. But Rui, I don't know if he qualifies as distressed or not.
I think it depends on how much stock you put into one playoff series, like one specific one, because last year against Denver, he was one of the few Lakers who didn't really struggle.
Right.
And for the majority of his regular season, once he was used sensibly, Rui played really, really well. Like, it is a mother of a matchup for him against Michael Porter Jr. Like, Denver has enough size that they can neutralize some of what makes Rui really effective offensively and defensively. Like, Michael Porter Jr., who, to be fair, is a nightmare matchup for a lot of players, and Michael Porter Jr. just keeps getting really good. That said, I think he is the single biggest reason that the Lakers lost that series. Even more than Jokic being Jokic and Murray's 2 game winners, I think Michael Porter Jr. ultimately is who did them in, and Rui is viewed as being on the bad end of that matchup. I would imagine he probably hasn't gone up as much as a trade asset as the Lakers would have hoped during the course of the regular season, but I doubt he's gone down too much. He's a useful player. He's on a reasonable contract.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly the Lakers' hope. He's just a tricky guy. I think, but this really gets to, like, the Lakers fans, pile on D'Lo, for example. He disappears in the playoffs. And I realized last year was not his first bad playoff. And I realized this year was not uniformly good against Denver, but he was certainly not played off the floor in the way that he was last year. And he was better than Rui, and Reeves had some. I just feel like this is how it works for most players in the playoffs. There are very few guys who really are good year to year. Again, the stars struggle. Donovan Mitchell, as good as he's been in some of the, he got off to a slow start in the playoffs. Like, his first couple games were pretty inefficient, whatever. Then he blew up, had that 50-point game and whatever. I think we buy into recency or whatever it might be, good or bad, and just forget most players in the NBA are inconsistent in the playoffs. They're not the same guy year to year. They're not the same guy series to series. So all you can kind of do is just figure out, does this player fit into my system over 82 games? And I guess this gets to, who are they going to hire and what system are they going to run? Probably has a lot to do with all of the stuff we were talking about.
Yeah. Or, does this coach that they want to hire, is he dead set on drafting Bronny James, who could be staying in the draft right now? He went through his medicals as part of the pre-draft combine stuff, passed everything with flying colors. He's not officially now in the draft, Bronny, and we've said this many times. LeBron has been going out of his way to downplay the whole me and Bronny have to play together. I'm going to manipulate my career in order to finish it out on the same team as my son. It's LeBron's own doing that this is a storyline that the media will refuse to let go. And, as people who covers the Lakers, we are obligated to give these updates. And I don't think it's impossible that they would use the 55th pick on Bronny if he ends up staying in the draft. But I do think that this storyline at this point is much more knee-jerk reaction than people really listening to what LeBron, listening to what Rich Paul keeps saying. Because let me tell you, if those guys wanted to drop the hammer of pressure, we've seen they will. Yeah. They're not shy about doing this stuff if they wanted to.
Tomorrow we can kind of carry this conversation, because Woj had some stuff to say that I don't actually agree with, about not just how the Lakers would look at Bronny, but how other teams would look at him in terms of his value and the reasons to draft him. And at 17 and 55, will the Lakers even be in position? If they use the 17th pick on Bronny James, I think LeBron would riot. Like, that is not the NBA ready player that LeBron wants to for next year. And then there's some speculation as to whether or not he'd be around at 55 anyway. So it's an interesting conundrum if the Lakers really are determined to get him. How? But then where he fits in, and I guess a lot of it will be determined post-combine. So we can get into some of that for the rest of the week. Obviously, we'll keep you updated on everything going on with the coaching search, who's up, who's down.
Before we go, though, it is worth noting, speaking of speculation and Bronny and LeBron James, Bronny's father, LeBron was in Cleveland taking in Game 4 of Celtics Cavaliers, which obviously...
Future Cav, yeah.
Well, obviously, this got a lot of NBA Twitter, a lot of speculation. LeBron is known for the passive-aggressive messaging. What was he doing in Cleveland? We can talk about this more for tomorrow's show, but if the listeners and viewers want to think about it, I came up with a list of possibilities I will leave you with. You may ponder, leave comments. Could he have been there to recruit Donovan Mitchell? Like letting Donovan Mitchell know, hey, I would love for you to try to force your way to LA.
Mitchell didn't play in that game, so he had time to talk.
Yep. Could LeBron have been sending a message to the Lakers? They love me here in Cleveland. You got an ovation. Do my bidding, or you better package up all them picks. Otherwise, I could be looking around. Could he be sending a message to Cleveland? Make an offer, and I just might tell the Lakers, accept it. Is it about Bronny clearing those medicals, sending a message to Cleveland? Hey, you don't have any second-round picks. Purchase one in the upcoming draft. Start the storyline, the new generation with my son. Is it about LeBron wanting to change the narrative because he's been ignored too long? Is he trying to steal Bronny's own thunder because Bronny had been the story today? Or was he just bored and felt like watching a basketball game in person?
He is from Akron, nearby.
Yes. So curious what y'all think about that. Or is there a conspiracy theory that I forgot about.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out and weigh in on Andy's conspiracy theories with over 24,000 subscribers. We'll see everyone tomorrow.